Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. So here, I would like to explain or elaborate more about the one of the theme that has been that has been mentioned on the midterm project under the subject of applied linguistic, which here I would love to elaborate more about the and explanations to applied linguistics and language learning. My name is Daffa Praditya Devano Ramadan. You can call me Daffa. I'm currently majoring in English literature and now attending the sixth semesters. My SID or NIM is 332101112, and I'm from Chengkareng campuses or Chengkareng branch. So let's get started with this presentation. What would we discover in on this topics? So there are four learning objectives that I would like to explain a bit. So first thing first is to give you an understanding, an understanding to the definitions, purposes, and the history of applied linguistics and language learning. And then secondly is to give an overview of the influence of applied linguistics toward language learning. And thirdly is to break down the number of issues appeared on the applications of applied linguistics within language learning. And then last but not least is to provide solutions upon the problem encountered. So here are the contents that I would like to discover more and to disclose to you. The first is the history of applied linguistics, and then secondly is a concern raised upon applied linguistics and language learning, and third is applied linguistics and institutional problem, and then fourth is issues to be appeared around this topics, and then the fifth one is the validity of English proficiency tests, and then last but not least is the methodology used to encounter the problem. So let's get stick us with the first content. So the history of applied linguistics. So basically, the term applied linguistics, which refers to the application of linguistics to the study and improvement of language teaching, language learning, language planning, management of language defects, communication between groups, lexicography, translation, etc., owes its origin to the U.S. language teaching programs during and after the Second World War. So basically, applied linguistics was founded in the US, not in the UK necessarily, because of these terms is firstly presented publicly after the Second World War and refers to the US language teaching programs. And in America itself, in 1948, there was a conference there was a conference that organized by Charles C. Fries and supported among others like Kenneth L. Pike and W. Freeman Twaddle at the University of Michigan to disseminate information about work at Fry's English Language Institute on 1941. And on the other hand, in Britain School of Applied Linguistics was established by G.C. Catford at the University of Edinburgh in 1956, and Center for the Applied Linguistics was set up in Washington in 1959. So to mention or to refer to the previous statement that I was made, that as the applied linguistic was appeared to be something that central in language learning or in linguistics context in general, the Center for Applied Linguistics was set up in Washington as the platform for people who would like to know more about applied linguistics and have a better comprehensive understanding about the um, applied linguistics itself in Washington in 1959. The next one is the purpose of applied linguistics. So Brumfitt, 1977, 93, defined that applied linguistics is the theoretical and empirical investigation of real-world problems in which language is the central issue. On the other hand, Grape in 2000 stated that the focus of applied linguistics is on trying to resolve language-based problems that people encounter in the real world, whether they be learners, teachers, supervisors, academics, lawyers, service providers, etc. So, in conclusion, applied linguistics is an approach to resolve the world's problems through pedagogical method in which language learning is involved as a path to deliver the solutions to encounter the problem. So therefore, the coherence between applied linguistics and language learning are significantly correlated to each other, and even initially, the terms of applied linguistics were made to bridge the needs of English foreign learners on how the form of learning language as their second language shall be. And then there are two concerns raised during the development of applied linguistics. So the first is the essence of language teaching. So language teaching is essentially to giving the meaning of particular subject context with a dynamical process of discussions and argumentations. Yet, the implementation of language learning is worse than we can think of. The teacher is badly paid, the knowledge where the teacher is badly paid, and the students just be the listeners and passively gain the knowledge where they're supposed to have an active participation during the class. So this issue was raised because of the professors or the PhD students thing, and they obviously focus on the language learning. So they stated that um, language learning is supposed to be the platform for students or the English foreign learner that wants to gain and acquire and equip themselves with the knowledge of language, especially in English, to have an active participation during class. But in fact, turns out that the participation in class during the language learning is not that active. So it's just a passive learning process. That's where the result would be not really significant, but just they just equip themselves with the basic knowledge that not have further explanations or the comprehensive understanding about comprehensive elaborations about the meaning of language learning itself. And then secondly is the content of the material within curriculum. So as applied linguistics is keep growing by the time when it would be a challenge for the developers in drafting the content of curriculum, where they also have to consider about the active participation and meaningful participation of each student in learning the second language apart from their mother tongue, where this is crucial as it will enable them to unlock broader opportunity in the real world and develop their critical thinking and other related skills. So as we know that most of these students wants to equip themselves with the knowledge where they could compete in a global competitions and also have a high, pursue that they want to pursue on, like they would like to get an academical study like scholarship and in abroad, especially in an English speaking countries like in the UK, in America, in Canada, and other communities that offer them a wide range of social inclusivity the community um where the community within the country within the environmental itself is offering a bunch of benefit to them, not only for the academical related but also for their personal personal development, their social development. It's also important. So the content of the material within the curriculum, within the context of applied linguistics and language learning, has to be interconnected. As the word is very dynamic, we are growing fast than we ever think before. So the content must be adjusted with those constant raised by the learner or the English for learner especially. And next one is we're going to talk about the applied linguistic and institutional problem. So there are three problems here on this slide. The first is the optimum age, the second one is validity, and the last one is design. So for the optimum age itself, it has been a concern since decades ago, where people start questioning not only the teacher but also the stakeholders, the policymakers, the government's representative, and even people like really public start to questioning what is the right age to start language learning, as we know that um, language learning basically starting to be included in within the curriculum since early childhood, like start from 5 years old. But is that really proper? Is that really a context where it could be applied in other language in other countries as well? So for example, if in Indonesia we have this curriculum where the English language has been part of the curriculum since early childhood, which is since the elementary school or 5 years old, or even way less than that, like in the kindergarten, for example. So but there's one thing that obvious is that we shall start as early as possible, since the brain development start at 5 years old, and that's the golden age for everything. So in my opinion, in my personal opinion, I believe that language learning has to be start as early as possible, since if if we started on the age of 10 or more than that, then the ability of the children to be able to equip the language ability, especially for their as the second language, would be drained and not as optimum as as if they started in the early childhood. So in my opinion, personal opinion, we shall start language learning since 5 years old or since the early childhood. And for the second one is the validity. So we know that there are two types of English proficiency tests. There are IELTS and TOEFL. But for these concerns, I would like to raise the concerns within the validity that British Council is one of the institutions who have the rights to issue the test and give the validity on all EPT worldwide, no matter where you came from, no matter what countries are you settled on. But British Council, if you took an IELTS test, then British Council is the most eligible one, and the certificate could be applied in a lot of institutions, from the academical or the companies, worldwide companies. So therefore, since they have hold the authority for a long time, even since 1980s, if I'm not wrong. So should it revise, rewritten, or else? And should thus the evolution was needed, and drawing on as what a range of information as possible, because we know that we also need to adjust the content within the EPT itself, because sometimes the EPT itself is not really it's not significantly changed or developed since decades ago, so it's just similar to what it was like decades ago. So I think this is one of the concerns that we need to ask to ourselves and to the experts about the validity from one of the authority, one of the institution that hold the authority to issue the EPT test, the EPT certificate. I mean. And then thirdly is about the design. So it's super important to look closely at the rationale for its design, particularly at the validity notions to discrete language varieties. And furthermore, it's also necessary to include the inclusivity of content design made for the learners. So basically, what I'm saying in this is that we have we have the variety of races, of community, and also for the social inclusivity. But sometimes the EPT test does not considers that in each countries where they are settled in. For example, in India they have a very strong accents, but sometimes the accents could be mistaken for taking the EPT test, since we have to adjust ourselves with the standard of the English native speaker's accent, for example, from America or for the British. But we forgot about the inclusivity. We forgot about the upholding the local entity that we need to respect, because it's not about the white people, it's not about the actions, but it's also about how they can comprehensively extending their knowledge, their thinking, and their thoughts towards one specific or one certain topics during the EPT test. So I think it's super important to reconsider about the design and also the assessment within the EPT itself. And then this is also two of the additional issues to be appeared. So the fourth one is about the relevance, and the fifth one, or the last but not least, is the inclusivity. So the relevance is about, like, what I'm saying is that EPT has been required for non-native English to be able to pursue the dreams, the studies or works in English-speaking countries mainly, and this has been as it is since years ago or decades ago. But the content of the EPT material might have not relevance anymore with today's situations where the social context has changed so much, as well as the culture that now is rapidly changed as the globalization has massively spread across the world. So we cannot um, we cannot follow the standards of native speakers anymore, because the globalization is one of the most influential things that would have to be the point where we need to adjust the contents and the relevancy within the EPT test. And then the last but not least is about the inclusivity. So the ability of non-native speakers might depend on the age or where they're coming from. Sometimes there are some people who have such a thick or strong accent, so it makes them feel different and might fail the task due to the accents they encountered. So, for example, in India, they have a strong Indian accents, and then for Japan, Japanese people, Taiwanese people, or even the Arabic people that might have a strong accent. So they might have encountered these issues when they were taking the EPT test. But I'm afraid that this would no longer relevant with today's context, as I mentioned before, the globalization is one of the factors why the standards of English or native speakers are not really relevant. So we have to really adjust with the context of the country, or how of the cultures within the country. So yeah, that's the one of the issues that appeared within the applied linguistic within the language learning. And then there are methodologies that proposed by Davies, where it covers as below area below. So um basically Davies raised equations, like there are four equations, especially about second language acquisition research, language proficiency testing, teaching of LSP, and curriculum design. So for the first question, what are the stage what are the stages of second language learning? So as I'm previously mentioned, is that we have to consider that language learning is really depend on the learners on the learner itself. Started to engage themselves in the learning processes, and therefore, considering a number of aspects, then the best time for people to start acquiring their second language is around 5 until 10 years old. Why? Because they must have been fluent in their language. Then at the time also they still have a strong memory, so their core memory is still half empty, and we could start to insert, embracing the knowledge, or acquiring the second language of themselves. So when they're grown up, they would be able to speak in one, two, or even more languages within their head. And then also about the what are the markers of successfully language learning? So the marker of success here is that when the students are able to comprehensively understand the content and also able to give an appropriate response toward the questions raised. And furthermore, the students also have to have the ability of critical thinking, where it will enable them to sharpen their thought and be critical to everything in any context. And then the third one is what the student needs to know. So they basically have to acquire the knowledge of language, starting from the history of the language they learn about, and then the purpose of why they have to learn these languages, either because of this is internationally used, or either because of business. This is one of the businesses language, so they could easily chasing their dreams to the company, global company, where they could, adjust themselves with the language used within the company. And then about the grammar as well, we also need this, as we don't, you know, we're not limiting ourselves to just speaking in the language, but also writing, reading, and listening. So the grammar is also important. And then how they can appropriately use the language in all manner of situations. So they must possess the curiosity of how the language could be developed, where it will lead them to gain critical thinking skill. Because it's also important when you learn about one particular language, you also have to know about the context, about the social culture within that exists within the language itself. And then when we possess one language as our second language, then we have to understand about, when the social context of that country that using that language as their main or as their national language, then we could easily know what are the contexts that currently going on on that country, because we already develop our critical thinking skills through the language, because sometimes the social context and culture are just interconnected with the history that they have. So, and the last but not least is that what does the teacher needs to know about applied linguistics within the language learning? So, as an educator, the teacher must possess the ability of delivering the content in language learning appropriately. Why? Because they are the key of whether the content within the language learning will be delivered successfully or not. Therefore, as a teacher, they have to acquire a wide range of knowledge in the language itself, since they have the responsibility to be able to answer all the questions related to the language learning from the students. Other than that, the teacher also have to encourage and dig the curiosity of the students, where it could activate an active learning atmosphere, and as an outcomes, the students will be able to actively engage themselves in the situations that requires them to turn on their critical thinking and make a thought-provoking discussions with other people. So that's an ultimate objectives of why people needs to have their second language and acquire other language ability other than apart from their mother tongue. So yeah, that's basically the intentions why applied linguistic and language learning are greatly significantly correlated. And yes, thank you so much. That's all from me. And I would like to say thank you for watching this video. Hopefully it will be enhance your knowledge and also enhance your understandings about applied linguistic and also language learning, especially the interconnectedness between those contexts. Thank you so much. My name is Daffa. I would like to close this presentation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.